Okay, so let's continue talking about quantitative research and focus specifically on surveys. Okay, so survey questionnaire construction honestly can be a whole class, but I'm just going to go over just a few things that you should know as you start to construct your surveys. So, survey construction really is an art and a science. You need to word every question carefully and make sure that there is no room for misinterpretation. Questions that are loaded questions, right? A question, I'm just going to make light of it, you know, let's say, when did you last beat your wife? Or some crazy question like that, right? I mean, obviously it's an extreme question, but the answer to that is, hey, wait, what kind of assumption is that? Why do you think I beat my wife? Right? That's a loaded question, a question that makes certain assumptions. And then there are questions that are leading questions that push people to answer a particular way. And that's not really the way a question should be framed, because you want to leave it open and you want people to answer, in the way they want to answer. So you want to be a little careful in terms of how, to construct those questions. And then, of course, you want to make sure that when that survey is out for people to take, that it is timed well. Um, People might respond differently in a specific situation than they would otherwise to those questions. And so be careful in terms of when that survey is put in the market, when it's executed. And again, remember that every question has to be worded right so that there is no misinterpretation and that you need to avoid questions that are leading or loaded. Okay, now that we've put that sort of in context, let's just look at the kinds of questions that you could ask. Again, this is not a survey class, and I don't intend to get into the depth of all the stuff, but this is just an overall understanding for you. So look at the survey question right there. Give a range of possible answers, right? 1, 2 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, more than 12. What you're seeing here is categories that are mutually exclusive, right? So I'm not saying 2 to 5, 5 to 8, because then the person who wants to say 5 is confused whether they fit into bullet point number 2 or bullet point number 3, right? So when you ask a question, give them a chance to answer in mutually exclusive categories, and also make sure that your choices are exhaustive, right? So let's say they don't know, you should be able to answer that. If it is 14, then I know exactly which category it would fit in. And if it's 105, I know which category it's going to fit in as well. Okay. Then there are Likert scale kind of questions with strongly agree, agree, undecided, disagree, strongly disagree. And people just choose one of those, right? But you see how you have a scale there, right? So somebody might agree with something but not strongly agree with it. And so you've given them that option to say, hey, I like it, but not too much, right? So that kind of thing is really important. So when you're constructing surveys, make sure you have a range of answers, that the list is exhaustive, the categories are mutually exclusive. And if you're using scaled, make sure that that scale also fits the same criteria as well. Let's now talk about the different forms of surveys. So we have, different forms of surveys that respondents can, answer through. So the first one there is mailed questionnaire. This is simple, right? A survey comes to your house and you complete it and you send it off, you know, and mailed, like postage is also provided as well, right? Postage is paid for, so you can send it back for free. Um, Honestly, a lot of people don't do mailed anymore. Census this year also gave us an option of online, which was the main option, which was great. Um, but there's often, if it's a corporation doing it, you may get paid to do it. It might be a long, lengthy, survey, but it is a very expensive proposition, and also, you know, not many people actually complete it and send it. Okay, so the response rate would be lower. So you're seeing very little of this. The second one is telephone. Now, of course, it's less intrusive than meeting people face to face, and a little bit more personal than a mailed interview, right? But how many of us have actually picked up the phone when someone says, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you for 10 minutes?" You're like, "Oh my God, no." You don't pick up the phone, right? So it's really hard to convince people to complete that survey. Sometimes you start it off and then you're like, honestly, my kid is crying, I gotta go. Or I have another meeting coming up, so I need to hang up, right? So the completion rate is not great. Nowadays, people do not want to pick up a phone, that where the contact says like spam or unknown. We don't pick it up. So, I mean, it is better than a mailed questionnaire, no question about it. But it's not that successful, right? So both mailed and telephone, I mean, it's going down in usage. Fewer people are using it. The third one that you see there is web and email surveys, right? So clearly, we're seeing a lot of these, right? So a survey comes into your inbox, and you choose to pick it up. Sometimes, if it's short, you may complete it. Sometimes, if it's too long, you may leave it halfway. You may then get a reminder saying, "Hey, you've got this survey you need to complete." And you may choose to complete it or choose not to complete it, right? The shorter ones, two or three, four questions. I mean, people answer that, right? The polls, yes, they get completed as well. Okay, so it is cheaper to do this online, versus honestly, like the whole mailed and telephone and face-to-face stuff. This is so much cheaper. You get responses pretty much right away as well, but it's hard to track if somebody has taken the survey before, and if they want to take it again, if they can just take it again, then that kind of messes up our responses, right, and our data. So we do have issues with repeated participation. Although nowadays, you have cookies, and there are ways to track which computer you took that survey from. But in general, it is harder. It's definitely harder. And then you really don't know the person you're talking with. You know, I might say I'm female, age 30, but I might be male at age 60. I mean, nobody really knows who's taking the survey. And so those are some of the problems with any kind of web or email survey. All right, so we've talked about different forms of surveys. This is one last one. This is called the omnibus or the piggyback survey. Now, this is the kind of survey which, is an interesting one. So let's say I am a small brand and I have $10,000 every year to conduct a survey, and I don't have more money to do that. Um, and so I reach out to a larger a company that sends out a survey, every month. And, they send out the survey to 5,000 people and they get great responses. So we say, we can't do these big surveys. We can't, have that many people, so what can we do? So we reach out to these people and we say, we got $10,000. If you can put a couple questions every month when you put that survey out, if you put a couple questions for my brand, if you put a couple of my questions in your larger survey, I can get those responses and you get some money that you can, toward the survey, which will help you toward your costs. And so, how about we do something like that, right? And so, that is what we call a piggyback survey. I piggybacked on the survey, on the larger survey, right? And some people call it the omnibus, which is the industry name for it. But piggyback's easier to remember, right? So, you're just going to, as a brand, you just go to a larger market research company and say, can you add a couple of my questions? Right. And sometimes the questions are around like who is the most popular person, like influencer in sports right now, right? Who would you like to see, endorse a cereal box, right? And then people answer, and then it's easier for you to choose that one person who's most popular and have them represent your brand, right? And so that is what we call an omnibus or a piggyback survey. Okay, so we've talked about surveys, and what I want to do now is talk about research tools for monitoring, and that should be in my next video.